I'm Liz Cairns and this is Gaynor Morgan.
And we're joined today by Swansea Council leader Rob Stewart and local former Evening Post editor Spencer Feenry, and also Richard Beale of the Swansea Ramblers is with us. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you both. Richard, it's summertime, not by the weather, mind, but it is actually summertime. Yes, it's actually changed. Let's hope now it stays. I have heard, a little bird have said it's going to be rain, but we forget
rain
that
tomorrow, I believe.
Yes, but hopefully we'll have full summer. But what have you been up to?
Well, it's, as you say, the weather's been a bit topsy-turvy. Last Thursday evening, we had a walk around the enterprise zone. Now, it sounds unusual to do that. It's not built up at all. Parts of it, parts I'd never walked on, actually, were very greened over now. It's like a forest and so on. You go under the main railway line, and there's some routes, footpaths in there, which aren't actually registered, and we've got a campaign in our group to try and get some of those registered.
Is there a real forest there?
Well, it looks like it. I don't know if we've got a bit of a presentation to show some of that walk, I think. And you wouldn't think you were near the centre of Swansea. It really is something quite different.
Oh, perhaps we can see for ourselves. I believe it when I see it.
Yeah. This is all part of it now.
So what's this?
I think it's an old pit. We couldn't quite work that one out. And this is the leader, Andrew Morgan, talking as we just go under the bypass. This is another part. Again, you wouldn't think the enterprise zone was a quarter of a mile away, would you?
No.
You cannot see it. You can hear a bit of traffic, but other than that...
Is that up where the industrial area was?
Yeah, well, it's on the slopes of, I suppose. We started off by Vendrod Lake, and then you walk under the bypass that goes up towards Tesco's and so on. And then you're heading towards Bonamine and Trathloin in this sort of shot here. So, yeah, it's quite a surprising area. And I was intrigued to go there. And there's a couple of footbridges across the busy road, and I always wondered what they linked into. Yeah. If you drive up from near the Copper Quarter, going up towards... Bonamine, Trathloin, you go under these bridges, but it wasn't at all obvious what they linked into. So that's one of our bits of research we do on trying to get some routes that aren't on the map. They call it a definitive map, showing the legal routes and get them protected. And the land's owned by Swansea Council, so it might make it easy.
Accessible.
Yeah. So that now you'll put onto your app that you've spoken about before, would you say?
No, we do use an app for recording things, but not for this particular thing, no. But you're quite right. Well, we have a way of recording things. The big path watch is called.
I love these little lost worlds, and also seeing things from a different perspective. Like you said, you could see the bridges. Well, now you could see...
Yeah.
Quite exciting.
Yeah. And then what else did we do? Well, on Saturday there was a walk in Three Cliffs Bay prior to a social event. We called it a pop-up kitchen. One of our members lives in Park Mill in the woods there and opens their garden up for us, and it's a social event, so we had a walk, and then we had a Babita's pop-up kitchen, Indian food in the garden. The sun came out, it couldn't have been better.
Sounds lovely.
Drinks, and these people have got a swimming pool at the back, so some of us went in there. So.
Deliberately? You were
no, it's prepared. So, and then there was a walk on Sunday on Gower. I didn't go on that one. That was starting Rosilly and circling around, about a 10-mile walk. So there's lots of things going on, really. We had one on Monday, a shorter one on Monday at Kevin Bryn, and you know this time of year we have 4 or 5, maybe 6 walks a week. You know, so there's lots of different ones for people to choose from, really.
And yesterday evening was lovely. I went for a little walk up on Mynydd Aguirre. I didn't walk far because the Scotch pine was just a long way over. But the views from there, looking down towards the Lough Estuary.
Yeah, that's right. It's a fabulous area.
Amazing.
I think it's going to change somewhat now. They're building wind turbines up there.
Oh no, I thought my daughter and I thought it rather added to the.
I haven't been up there since they've been built, but I know that
they're so majestic and almost graceful as they're turning.
They're a bit Marmite, aren't they, wind turbines?
Yeah,
I think some people think to enhance the landscape. Other people seem to be.
Well, somebody put it in context the other day and said, well, if you don't like them, once you think about what they do and how they're helping the planet, you learn to love them. And I think, you know. Anyway.
Do you get many young ramblers?
Not that many, really, no.
They're waiting for me to join. Sorry.
Indeed. The Ramblers set up a younger person's group called, in Swansea, it's the Towie Trekkers. In Cardiff, it's the Tiger Bay Ramblers. But I think that the idea was to attract younger people, but I think they've only got 30 or 40 members, whereas Swansea Ramblers have got 400, so I don't know, it somehow hasn't worked. But I think younger people haven't always got the time and family commitments and working full time. It's things like that.
I suppose it has to be keyed into the curriculum or the Duke of Edinburgh or something like that, doesn't it? It could be keyed into that.
Yeah. I mean, young people under the age of 16 can come as long as they're accompanied by an adult on the walks, but no, that rarely happens. Sometimes we have some students, overseas students who had Chinese students come occasionally. They don't have a car, but if they can get to the walk, you know, they're in Swansea.
I guess obviously for people who are in school or people who are still sort of building their careers, you've got to time the walks around their lives, haven't they? They can't come to walks mid-morning or mid-afternoon,
That's right. We have them, yeah, you're quite right. And we have some of the weekends, obviously, in the summer we have some evening ones, and that's really designed for people, well, if they were in school or if they're in work to come. And that does attract a few people. So it's a variety, really.
It might be a good idea to incorporate it into the curriculum. It also encourage school children to take more interest in
and more care of the environment as well. I think, I've to start a campaign.
Start a campaign. Start a Bay TV campaign.
Shall we have a look what's on?
I think that'd be a good idea. We can always learn from history, can't we?
Definitely. In 1960, Anton Banderas was born. The Spanish, we know the Spanish actor, and he's known for his roles in such films as The Mask of Zorro, Spy Kids, Philadelphia, Assassins and Desperado, and he also voiced the character for Puss in Boots.
Yes, he did.
And that was in the Shrek sequels, and alongside Brad Pitt in the 1994 film Interview with a Vampire. But we have a clip of Puss in Boots.
All right.
I have misjudged you. Join the club, we've got jackets. On my honor. I am obliged to accompany you until you have saved your life, as you have spared me mine.
I'm sorry, the position of annoying talking animal has already been taken. Let's go, Shrek! Shrek?
Someone went through there. We have to hurry.
Well, Antonio Banderas, I have to say his name.
Renamed
so wrong.
With our own Catherine Zeta-Jones, of course.
Got the local touch there.
The different characters that he's played throughout his time is brilliant.
All with the same name.
With the same name, yes, the name that he was born with and continued to use. And I decided to change it today.
Oh, well.
On his birthday, why not? Next, we have, in 1961, Britain applied for membership of the EEC, which is the European Economic Community.
It's ironic, isn't it?
That's a story that continues, isn't it?
Do you remember De Gaulle? No.
Yeah, that's right,
He was
perhaps he knew something.
Wow.
He always said, didn't he?
He
that
did,
we let
yes,
Britain
he
in,
did.
It would change the European Union and we'd be difficult partners.
Yeah.
Proved to be right.
That's true. You must have foreseen Margaret Thatcher in a handbag.
Well, of course, it was Margaret Thatcher, of course, who was really instrumental in getting us so involved in the Union as it is now.
Yes, extraordinary, really.
I know it was Ted Heath who initially took Britain in. Margaret Thatcher was actually a very, very strong Europhile.
Yes.
Which led up to the Maastricht Treaty, which formed the European Union.
She always said afterwards that she was stitched up by the Europeans on Maastricht. But
they always say that, don't they? I mean, there are more of them than us. We've never been strong members of the club, have we?
No.
I don't think.
No, we came to it late.
Yes.
And I think we didn't quite get the ethos behind it.
No.
When you see the expenses that have been revealed today in the Telegraph, I think, then perhaps you think maybe it's a good thing that we didn't get the ethos because they seem to be extortionately large.
Yes.
Yes, but that could have been moderated, couldn't it? Some of these things could have been refined. I don't know.
Well, I think people have been trying a long time to moderate the spending in Brussels and Strasbourg, and hasn't worked yet.
I would prefer to argue around the table than what's happened in history, but who knows? Anyway.
And quickly, in 1897, the founding the RAC, which you know, the Royal Automobile Club, originally known as the Automobile Club of Great Britain.
Oh, gosh. Takes you back to another world, doesn't it? When people used to motor.
Yes. do you remember when the AA had the motorcycles with sidecars?
Oh, yes.
And when they drove past a car with an AA badge, they would salute.
Oh, Oh, wow,
Yes.
it's there.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm old enough to remember that.
I can remember that.
Takes you back to a genteel world, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
It's all right if you were in the right level of society, I suppose.
Well, the RSC, of course, was very much...
Very pucker.
Well, the cars were a luxury item, weren't they?
There we go.
Not many people
Well,
had them.
thank you both.
We're heading into a break,
Yes, and we'll be looking at the papers.
so we look forward to seeing you then. Welcome back to Today on Bay TV. We have with us Richard Beale of the Swansea Ramblers, and journalist Spencer Feenry is with us. And of course we've got Liz.
Yes, I'm still here as well. We're all here together. We can start off straight away with the Evening Post. And it says, man behind bomb hoax wanted attention. Now, Richard Punchard, he has been given 16 months after basically he put a hoax device under a bench in the middle of the quadrant. 2 days after the suicide attack in Manchester, which was on the May 24th, he actually put the hoax bomb. It's one of our actual... Do you want to mention him?
Well, it's Jack, isn't it? Jack Slee. He's pressing the buttons now as we speak.
Yes,
and,
yes.
I think wasn't he instrumental in helping the police to catch him?
He actually tackled him to the ground, bless him.
Rugby tackle, wasn't it?
He did, yes. And if you saw the size in him, you'd think, oh my heavens, he's a little one. But I tell you what, he is brave and he's strong, and we all commend him.
I always said he's a little star.
Well done. Well done.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well done, Jack. You're a trooper.
The whole story around it, though, the fact that he created it out of a jewellery box and it was wires from a computer and then just tape, he taped it around. But like they've said, it was down to the fact that he wanted attention. He'd seen what had been going on. And this is the problem sometimes when things are it has to be highlighted, obviously, in the media, but then you do tend to get copycats.
You will always get copycat versions, but you can't use that as a reason not to... not to cover things. What you mustn't do, I think, in situations like that is reveal so much detail that it's easy for people to actually copy the details or something. There are rules in the editor's code for newspapers that are very specific on that. Also, of course, on covering suicides. When you report suicide, you must not reveal detail of the method used in suicide.
It's quite a sad backstory to this, isn't there? But also, talking about Jack, when Jack rugby tackled him, he didn't know whether he was a bomber, a real bomber. Nobody knew what the package was.
That's right.
So he really was very brave.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So, yeah, these things are very sad, aren't they? Because everybody was in a state of heightened alert at the time.
This is it, exactly, because they said, I think it cost nearly £2,000 just for what they had to do within those minutes, I suppose.
Well, they had to shut down the quadrant as well, didn't they? And lock down the city centre. Yes, so it's all disruptive, and obviously you probably call in extra police and things like this.
Yes.
So it's a huge impact. When people do stupid things like this, it has a huge knock-on impact.
And it's to do with when I look at it and things, it's, when now Theresa May is bringing in new laws with regards to the internet, because the access, it was too easily accessible for people to go onto the internet and find ways of creating bombs, and this was a big problem as well. Now I think there's been problems with them just shutting down.
I think this problem won't be solved until and unless the big internet companies take it more seriously.
Yes.
They have huge resources, which enables them to target you with advertising, yet apparently they don't have the resources to remove this material. I think it's nonsense.
Exactly.
And they make a big fuss about smaller issues, about being politically correct and all that sort of thing, but they don't actually get to the nitty-gritty.
I think the laws now are going to be where they implement heavy fines if they don't take them down. Whether it like you said, whether they'll do it, but...
Apparently they haven't got enough monitors, have they? Monitoring all this stuff.
I just don't believe that. I mean, I said their algorithms are sophisticated enough to target you with advertising. These people are brilliant at what they do. I'm sure they have algorithms that will identify there are bomb makers.
Which is another argument, perhaps, for getting youngsters out and about. And
it could be, yes, giving them things to do. I mean, we have a lot of fun when we go outdoors on the walks. We see all sorts of places from different angles and so on. So. Yeah, it's a sort of education, but not in that sense, and that's sort of a byproduct of it. But
and it is challenging.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
It keeps them away from being indoors constantly on the internet. They're bored and they get them out in fresh air. You mustn't be
anti-internet. The internet it's a wonderful, wonderful tool.
Oh heavens, definitely.
It's down to the companies who are running it to make sure that everything on there is safe.
Yeah. Moving on, the story it's in mainly all the papers. The Metro starts with police hired a child rapist as sex gang spy. The Sun, cops pay child rapist £10,000. The Daily Mirror, child rapist paid £10,000 to trap sex gang. Cops defend payout after perverts convicted of abusing victims as young as 13. And Daily Mail, first Rochdale, now Newcastle, where 18-strong grooming gang is convicted of scores of crimes against up to 108 girls. How many more girls' lives torn apart by sex gangs? And also the Eye, outrage as rapist paid by police. The actual wordings speaks for themselves.
Apart from the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail, they're going on a very different line.
Yes.
All the other papers honing in on this issue of should the police have paid a convicted child rapist.
Which isn't the main story.
It's a story. It's a very big story.
But
the Mail has focused on the other story, which is the grooming gang.
Yes, exactly.
And that raises the whole point. They mentioned Rochdale there. The police and the Crown Prosecution Service have been very heavily criticised for historically not taking these cases seriously enough and regarding the victims as unreliable witnesses and therefore not proceeding with it. Now, it appears that to take this case forward or for the police to get their first inroads into this gang,
they had to.
They needed a supergrass.
Yes.
And evidently this man was only prepared to help them for money. And it's a huge ethical dilemma, I think, and it raises very important questions. However, if they hadn't paid him the money and he hadn't given them the intro, given them the information they needed to start tracking this gang down, presumably
could still be continuing.
We have got a video on us explaining it, and from two different views also.
Okay.
SIM cards, drugs, computers, cash.
Well, we'll sort it out at the police station, okay?
Look, I get entirely that this is very, very difficult for people. Many people will look at that and say it's morally reprehensible, repugnant that the police would pay somebody in those circumstances, a convicted child sex offender, for information. This is the world we have to enter into, and it's shadowy, it's murky, it is full of risks. What I can say is this: the prize that we are seeking and that we gained in this case is that the information we gathered from that individual has put dangerous men behind bars.
He came over very well, didn't he, in that phrase, this is the world we have to enter into.
It's the old question, isn't it? Does the end justify
it is,
by the means, you know? And I don't know. I think there'll be a continuing debate.
Yes. The NSPCC are heavily critical of it.
Yes. And
what was their answer?
And you understand why. But again,
yes, because they think
what is their solution?
It's a pretty brutal world out there.
Yeah. The question has to be, I think, could this investigation have been carried out without the information provided by that man?
Yeah.
You know?
And we'll never know that.
I think it is.
That can never be proven, really.
You think not?
Well, not really.
It depends, I suppose. But is there going to be an inquiry into it? I mean, in a way, I think if there's going to be an inquiry into this, again, that's going to be diverting attention.
Yeah.
And
what needs to be highlighted is the fact that these criminals have been found guilty.
Yes.
And this should be really the core of all of it. But the fact now that this man has been paid £10,000, I think that's been taken away. But the core, yes.
The
fact is that they have managed.
That the grooming gang has been taken off the streets.
Do we know what's happened to him since?
Continue.
Presumably his
identity will be protected, won't it? So
forever.
You're not going to be given any information, I think, about what he's done with the money, for example. But you know, these gangs are still there, aren't they? You know, but it does appear that the police and the CPS now are taking it much more seriously, in as much as they are now perhaps changing their own criteria on reliable witnesses, and I think they're now taking the victims as more
yes,
credible.
they've learned from Rochdale.
And also the definition of reliable, because how reliable can a very distressed young girl be, or a frightened young girl, or a groomed?
And there's always this question about how much you then expose these victims to in court, If they're called as witnesses, they are ferociously cross-examined by defence barristers. Are they able to stand up to that? You know, if they can't stand up to it, then the case collapses, and you've lost your opportunity to nail these people. You know, so it's easy to sit around, I think, and pontificate about it. But I think it's tough.
Thanks, anyway. More to chat about after the break. So we'll see you then.
See you then.
Welcome back to Today on Bay TV. I'm Gaynor Morgan, this is Liz Cairns. We have with us Swansea Council leader Rob Stewart and of course Spencer Feenry. So thanks for joining us both.
Thank you. Rob, can you please tell us or shine the light on the relationship between the London Labour and the Welsh Labour?
Oh, big question to begin with. Well, look, I mean, we live in a devolved nation. Like all political parties in Wales, we have a Welsh Labour Party, as the Welsh Liberal Democrats do, as the Welsh Conservatives do. I think the difference for Labour, I guess, is that we're in government in Wales. So we already have a programme of government that's agreed. And there are things that are different in Wales to England. And I would say a lot of the things are better in Wales, that we get better healthcare in Wales than they do in England. That's clear now from the statistics. We've taken different priorities forward in Wales in terms of how we support our young to flourish in their early years. Programmes that the Welsh Government have retained that the UK Government have decided to do away with over the border. So quite rightly, the party organisation behind that reflects that, and that's why there's autonomy really in many parts of the decision making for Welsh Labour as opposed to UK Labour. But you know, they're collaborative. I think they share many of the same beliefs, many of the same aims.
Not all.
But I think the focus is slightly different in areas because there are devolved issues in Wales.
One of the areas, I guess, with the difference is Brexit, isn't it? Corbyn Jones and Jeremy Corbyn, I think, have different stance on the importance of remaining in the single market, or at least the customs union post-Brexit.
Well, I don't think there's many people who could put in a room that didn't have a different view about how Brexit works. Look, I think they both...
But when you've got the Labour leader in Wales and the Labour leader in the UK, perhaps having what appears to be quite a wide difference of opinion on that,
I genuinely don't think the difference of opinion is that wide. I think it's about flavours of the same thing. They both believe that we have to follow the political mandate that the people have given us to leave Europe. I think what both the UK Labour Party and the Welsh Government are struggling with is a lack of leadership from the UK Government at the present time, because I don't think there's a clear plan coming out of the UK Government as to how they're dealing with Brexit. Now, as part of my role, I'm European spokesman for the Welsh Local Government Association, and again, I'm struggling to see what the plan is. Again, it'd be good to have position papers from the UK Government. I know David Davis has promised this, but we haven't had position papers.
It's quite easy to say that when you're not in government. Or when your party is...
When you're in government, you have to say what you intend to do. Now, I understand for negotiation reasons they may not wish to give away all of their position, all of their position publicly, but you should set out what you're aiming to achieve. And I think at the present time we don't have clarity from the UK Government about what exactly they want, and that's because the UK Tory party is extremely split on this issue, as the Cabinet is.
Would you like Britain to remain in the single market post-Brexit?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. I think it's
even if that involves retaining freedom of movement.
Well, again, I think you can strike a different deal on freedom of movement, because again, I think you've got to strip out what was wrongly said during the referendum campaign. You know, with all these horror stories about Turkey joining the European Union and us being flooded with...
They had no chance of joining anyway.
It was never going to happen. You know, Turkey is so far away. So I think UK is such a big entity in terms of its population. There is an opportunity for us to potentially negotiate a different form of freedom of movement with the European Union.
Brussels isn't saying that though, Robert. Brussels are sticking to this line that if you want to stay in the single market, you have to keep freedom of movement. You can't be in the club and not stick to the club's rules.
Well, you know, I'm on record prior to the European referendum as saying, actually, I think freedom of movement is an important thing to retain, because I don't want my children or the next generation not to be able to travel freely in Europe, not to be able to go and set a business up, not to be able to live in any part of Europe they choose. It's our freedoms that are being eroded here. And I think what we need to do is to make sure that the UK government negotiate on our behalf are negotiating to protect our freedoms.
So you'd be comfortable if, when the deal is finally done, and I agree with you, the deal seems to be a long way off, and none of us are clear what the UK government wants to achieve. But when the deal is done, if there is a strong element of freedom of movement retained in order to keep a strong element of access to the single market, you'd be happy or comfortable with that?
I think that's a pragmatic position, because if you think about it, the issue that people have with migration at the moment is that it's uncontrolled. So if there are elements of control in there in terms of people can still travel freely for travel, you can, if you've got the right skills, etc., go and set up your business in other countries. If there is a framework around that to allow that to happen, I'd be very pleased with that, because I think it's in our country's interest to do it. And again, it's not a political position, it's an economic position.
The big question is whether Brussels will allow that, because I guess if that happens, and it sounds like a good position, you can bet your bottom dollar that France and Germany and Italy would be, their national governments, I think, would be saying, well, we want something similar as well, because this issue of unmanaged immigration is not just affecting the UK.
So why can't we evolve the whole policy and everybody benefit?
But then what's the point of Brexit?
Well,
the point of Brexit, I guess, is people voted to leave what would appear to be an EU that wasn't prepared to go through these reforms. And I guess when Cameron went to Brussels and sought the New Deal,
they didn't help him.
He was rebuffed, wasn't he?
No, yeah.
You know?
I think the point on this, and you know, you talk to people in pubs and elsewhere, the line that comes through again and again is people say, well, we didn't realise it meant that. And I think, you know, I'm not up for a second referendum, but I think when the people of the UK, for the people of Wales, understand how it's going to affect them, they should be given a choice as to whether or not that's the right deal for them. It's not to say that we won't leave and change our relationship with Europe, but is the deal right? Is there a better deal? Is there a different deal?
But we're not in the driving seat when it comes to the deal, are we?
Well, look, we've got to go and negotiate. I mean, they've given the mandate by the people to go and negotiate a different relationship. What that different relationship looks like, at least we should have a say on whether it's the right relationship.
You'd be happy to have a second referendum on the deal? For the people of Britain to say they're happy with this deal or not?
I think there needs to be some sort of view as to the acceptability of the deal when it comes. Because if it's a deal that's economically unacceptable to the majority of people, if it's socially unacceptable to the majority of people, why on earth would we accept a deal like that? If it's a really bad deal, why would we want it?
But your position sounds quite close to Vince Cable's new position for the Lib Dems. Maybe moving forward, we will see Labour and Lib Dems working more closely together.
Well, actually, I think that a large part of the Tory party is of a similar opinion. There is a core, as we know, group of hard-line Brexiteers, or the hard Brexiters, as they're called, who want a deal at any cost. And, you know, I think that's an economically unsound position to take, because I don't ever want to, as a politician, put us in a place where the generation that's coming after us are going to be poorer than us.
That's what's going to happen.
Well, we've got a chance to avoid that if we negotiate the right relationship with Europe. And it's not about going back on the vote. It's about saying, OK, we're going to have a different relationship. What could that look like?
How do you think Wales haven't allowed enough voice, though?
Well, the Welsh Government's frustration is that it's not, up until recently anyway, until the general election, wasn't being given enough of a voice in the negotiations. I know the Scottish Government had similar concerns. I think given that we've now ended up in a hung parliament where the Conservative government's power has been eroded, clearly there is more chance for influence, but it's still only influence. It isn't, as I would see it, a strong negotiating voice at the table.
There are vast tracts of Wales that are going to suffer, I would have thought, as a result of Brexit. Certainly farming. People voted, a lot of people voted to get rid of regulation, voted to get our fisheries back. None of that's going to happen, is it? Good deal or bad deal?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to achieve some of those things because, again, I think the slogan of the Leave campaign was "Let's take back control." Well, actually, what it's turned into is "Let's take us back to 1950." And actually,
no VAT?
But you can't do that. I mean, you cannot take the world back to a point 50 years ago. What you've got to do is to try and negotiate the best New Deal you can that protects our country's interests but gives us the opportunity to have a prosperous relationship with Europe and the rest of the world. That's what I'd like to see us do. I just don't think at the moment there are a group of people who really don't want to entertain that. They just want us to leave and to decide on something else. Well, you know, deals with the US on agriculture, you know, are we going to erode our agricultural standards? Because the reason why we have standards in Europe which are higher than the rest of the world are because we've decided as a population we don't want our meat to be washed in chlorine, for instance, before we consume it. So are we saying that actually the deal we'll do with America instead, we'll say, well, they'll flood our markets with your meat that we wouldn't consider to be of the appropriate standard to be sold in Europe? That's what it really means.
How does the future post-Brexit look to you, just very briefly?
I still think we aren't far enough down the road where we cannot, or where we still have an opportunity to get to a point where we can get a better deal than is being proposed at the moment. I think there's still time to do that. And again, you know, I don't think, you know, even in 18 months' time when we formally leave the European Union, that people will see much difference. The problem is what's put in place after that, and that's where we've got to focus our efforts now, is getting the best deal for us and the best relationship we can with the rest of the world.
I think we could probably all agree on that, can't we? So plenty more to talk about after the break, but thank you both. And we'll be going into a break and plenty more to chat about afterwards, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah?
See you after the break.
See you after the break.
Welcome back. I'm Liz Kent and this is Gaynor Morgan.
And Rob Stewart and Spencer Feenry have stayed with us, so a bit more chat, I think.
Well, Rob, I know we've had some good news this morning, that we've been told that by next year, phase 1 is definitely going to begin on regards to the digital media arena.
Yes.
So you can enhance us a little bit more on that?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, look, I know I had my sceptics at the time when we said we're going to do big things to the city centre, and people were a little sceptical. But, you know, we've stuck to the plan, and great news is, you know, by this time next year, people will see physical signs of construction on site on the new digital arena. We've appointed the Ambassador Theatre Group to run it with us. There'll be up to 200 events a year taking place there.
Remind us exactly where it's going.
So it's going on the car park area next to the LC. It's part of a hotel and other developments that are in that area. Residential are there, food and beverage and leisure are all in that area. And we've got the architects working at the moment on the look for the arena, because again we put some holding images, as you know, in the fly-through, but some of the really interesting stuff to make it a fully digital arena are, I've got to say, they are very sexy designs. I really like them. So in the next few months we'll be able to share those with you. But the good news is we're on track. You know, there's already work going on in the city centre. You know, people will, if you drive through the city centre now, you start to see the cranes over something.
Gone, isn't it?
Oceana is now completely down. The works on the Kingsway will begin in September, October time. The Mariner Street student residences, that begins in October. Coastal are already in High Street building their phase 2. Hammersons are in Park Tower, redoing Park Tower. You know, we just need the lagoon thumbs up now. We'll get on with that as well. So,
what's the latest news on that?
Well, you know, disappointing news on the electrification, as you know, and we've been quite clear that that is an unacceptable position. So we're meeting with both Welsh Government and UK Government to see what we can do in terms of getting that investment back into the region. But, you know, the government have said they're going to ban diesel cars and petrol cars by 2040. There's no point us, if we're going to move that, and we fully support that decision, there's no point us moving that way if we're continuing to recharge our cars from energy that's created in coal-powered power stations or in polluting energy. So getting things like the lagoons in place so that we've got renewable energy on tap for the majority of things that we need is really important, because that's the lesson that we learned in China. China have got lots and lots of electric cars.
We know it's important, but is it achievable?
Absolutely it is. And you know,
at the level of subsidy that the developer's asking for, isn't that the stumbling block now?
No, it was the stumbling block months ago. Actually, there is a new version that potentially could be put for consideration by Welsh Government, by UK Government, sorry. We're already at the point where we could bring the strike price in very close to nuclear. There are additional proposals that we are in discussion with governments on around whether we could take that down below nuclear. So actually it becomes even more productive.
Do you think that will be the deal clincher?
Well, look, they've got everything they need to make the deal. As I've said before, they could give the go-ahead now. That's what Charles Henry, their own energy minister, told them to do. So I'm still hopeful that the UK government will come through and allow us to build the lagoon. But I think we can do a deal outside of that to potentially lock in energy prices at a very attractive rate long term. So I'm hopeful of a deal still. So look, my plea is to Theresa May, you know, get your pen out, sign the deal, and we'll get on and build it.
Can I bring you back to the point on rail electrification? As you know, when I was still editor of the Post, I was involved in the campaign to get it extended. The situation I find now is maybe, I know there's a campaign to get the UK government to reverse their decision. I'm not sure that's actually going to achieve anything. And I think the introduction of the bimodal trains in a way kind of takes the business case or weakens the business case for us. What I picked up on Grayling's statement was this idea of intercity express trains all the way down to Pembrokeshire. And I'm beginning to think maybe it would be better now to divert attention away from the electrification campaign into having this new high-speed track west of Cardiff all the way down to Pembrokeshire. And also I've been interested in Professor Mark Berry of Cardiff University's suggestions the last couple of weeks to create an integrated public transport metro hub for South West Wales in the same way as proposed for Cardiff and the valleys in the southeast. And do you think maybe we should divert attention away from electrification and push harder on these two ideas?
No.
Because?
Because, one, the idea of this Feenry Parkway for Swansea was something that Byron Davis dreamt up. There isn't any evidence behind it. There isn't any work being done behind it. It's something that's off the cuff. And at the time, we said very clearly, look, if you want to invest in stations in Swansea, actually, we agree with Professor Mark Berry in terms of his assumption. We really need something that runs along the university campuses, along the seafront, picks up Tidal Lagoon, picks up the new arena, potentially brings back the Mumbles Railway, gives us that sort of connectivity into Swansea Station. So I like that concept. But let's just put the numbers. The UK government, their contribution currently to the city deal is about 120 million. By not doing electrification, they've removed 440 million. So they've given us 120 and they've taken 440 out. I want that money back in the region because we need it for our investment. Now, my priorities would be get the links along the seafront so that we've got the university campuses and the city centre linked up, and you could link them into Port Talbot railway station. That's potential there. I would like to see rail extended up the river corridor, up past the Liberty Stadium, and then on via places like DVLA and the hospital, linking in then to Feenry and on to Carmarthenshire.
Isn't all this to protect Swansea, not perhaps the better deal for West Wales, as Spencer was outlining?
No, because as I was saying, you connect then into the West Wales, because one of the things that Chris Grayling and Alan Ken said when they made the announcement was there wasn't a time saving. My understanding from Professor Berry is that if you took the route off at Port Talbot and came across,
you definitely get it.
You would save 15 minutes on the journey. So if the aim is to put additional infrastructure in to make the journey time shorter, then that certainly meets that.
If you put a new track in west of Cardiff, then that destroys that argument, because there's the number of stops and the speed limitations that mean there's no saving. Put in new track and both of those are gone, yes. Yeah.
So mine is, I like part of what's being proposed. I just think electrification, remember, we've just opened the Mover Relief Road in Swansea. People using that road now will now be driving past the sidings that have been built at great cost for servicing the electric trains. That investment is partially wasted now. Now again, that's going to be a visible example of where the government's changed its policy, spent money badly and left us in a very poor position. Swansea is not a poor relation to Cardiff. I will never accept that. And electrification should come all the way through to Swansea, and we should get the fair share of the capital investment in our region. That includes Swansea, Neath Port Talbot, Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire. What I don't like is a Conservative MP who's been rejected by the electorate, who threw in this idea without any evidence or without any support to say why it would be a successful proposition, making that government policy. That is just simply not good enough. We deserve better than that. I, with my City Region colleagues, proposing to meet with the UK government, we've already met with Welsh Government, to say, look, we can do the rail network in the South West Wales region differently, but we do need you to give us the investment in order for us to deliver it. So we're up for the discussion with the Secretary of State. I think he's already signalled his intent to meet with us. So that's what we'll be pushing on.
So just briefly, a new and viable and prosperous Swansea, Brexit or no Brexit? Just briefly.
We will be prosperous if we all stick to the plan and we believe in ourselves and we get the things delivered that we are, already committed to. The things that I'm not in control of at the moment are the Tidal Lagoon and electrification. But I'm certainly going to fight for both of those things to happen. Because, again, if we are to get a fair share and give ourselves the best chance of economic prosperity in the future, the government has to deliver on the things it's promised. Simple as that. I don't like broken promises.
And clearly the electorate don't, do they? I think that's part of the sort of disenchantment with politics at the moment, isn't it? People feel aggrieved that, the game just changes as you go along. Yeah. But there we go. We've had a good run round all the issues. Are you satisfied with all the answers, Spencer?
Well, I'm encouraged that Rob thinks that an integrated transport system around Swansea will actually not just prosper Swansea, but the whole region.
It has to. It has to be a regional solution.
Fingers crossed, then. I think perhaps things are looking better, Liz. Hopefully. A big thank you to all of our guests for joining us, and, of course, to all of you for watching.
And please stay with us for our afternoon matinee movie, which is the 1957 crime drama Hour of Decision, starring Lionel Jeffries.
Enjoy that.
Take care.